last class, we studied about the non-cooperation movement and the different causes, the programs, suspension and the importance. Today we are going to learn about the civil disobedience movement 1930. And here also we will mainly focus on the causes, two causes. The first one, it is the reaction towards the Simon Commission. You may please take page number 155, the Civil Disobedience Movement 1930, reason behind the launch of Civil Disobedience Movement, page number 135. So first of all, you should know what is disobedience or the civil disobedience. Disobedience, you know, not obeying or accepting the laws. So here civil disobedience means not accepting or obeying the laws given by the government. The government here means the British government. And under this, the first cause, it was reaction towards the Simon Commission. So first of all, we should understand why the Simon Commission was established in India. The aim of Simon Commission was aimed at political reforms, but you should understand what is the reason for the establishment of Simon Commission in India. The reason is that the Montauk Shelford reforms failed to satisfy the national aspirations of the Indians. In November 1927, the conservative government of Britain sent the Indian Statutory Commission, popularly known as the Simon Commission. The Montauk Shelford reforms failed in attaining the political reforms in India. So the conservative government in Britain, they sent an Indian Statutory Commission for aiming at political reforms in India. And the name of the commission was Simon Commission, and it was headed by John Simon. And the reason for sending such a commission or Simon Commission to India was to decide the political reforms in India. And as I told, it was headed by John Simon, and there were total 7 members in the Simon Commission. And what was the purpose or objectives of this Simon Commission? First one, to examine the working of the reforms introduced in India by the Montauk Shelford reforms or the Government of India Act 1919. Montauk Shelford reforms, it is also known as the Government of India Act 1919. And the first purpose of Simon Commission was to examine the working or the performance of Government of India Act 1919 or Montauk Shelford Act. And the second purpose was to suggest further constitutional reforms. So the first one, to examine the reforms that had already taken place, and the second purpose was to suggest certain constitutional reforms. And this speciality of the very Simon Commission was that it included only whites. That means only British people. No Indians were there in this particular commission. And according to this Simon Commission, there was no indication about the Swaraj. Swaraj means the complete independence. The two things you have to notice, the speciality of this Simon Commission, no Indian members, only white people were there. And the Simon Commission did not indicate anything about Swaraj. So normally you can understand that the Indians reacted to that. So it was taken as a direct insult to the people of India. The Indians, they thought that it was an insult to the Indian and Indian nationalism. So almost all the parties started to react against such a kind of attitude shown by the British government. Indian National Congress, Hindu Mahasabha and Muslim League and many other parties, they started to react. So all these parties planned to boycott Simon Commission. So when the Simon Commission reached at Bombay, on 3rd February 1928, all major cities and towns observed a complete hartal on that day. So all the major parties, they decided to boycott the Simon Commission. So once the Simon Commission reached there in Mumbai, all the major cities, they celebrated, they just observed hartal in all the areas. And black flags with the slogan "Go by Simon" was shown to the commission. So it expressed the dissatisfaction of Indian towards the Simon Commission. Why? Because no Indians were in that commission and it did not indicate anything, any reference about the Swaraj. So the people started to boycott Simon Commission and hartal was observed and the slogans were shown like "Go by Simon." During the protest movement, police made a lathi charge and many distinguished Indian leaders like Lala Lajpat Rai, Jawaharlal Nehru and Govind Ballabh Pant were beaten mercilessly. So that was the thing happened during the boycott time. The Indians boycotted Simon Commission, so the police started lathi charge and many leaders were beaten. And as a result, consequently, Lala Lajpat Rai died due to the chest injury caused by the lathis on 17th November 1928. This incident shocked the Indians and motivated them to take action. So that is the cause for the civil disobedience movement. The Simon Commission reached in India and no Indians were there, and the government of Britain, they sent Simon Commission to India to decide the political reforms in India, and the aim was to examine the political reforms that already started and again to suggest some constitutional changes. But no Indians were there in the Simon Commission and there was no reference to the Swaraj. So the Indians wanted to react against that one. So all the major political parties, they decided to boycott the Simon Commission. And on the arrival of Simon Commission, Indians observed that particular day as hartal, and the slogans were shown like "Go back Simon." So the police started lathi charge and many Indian leaders, they were beaten, and Lala Lajpat Rai was died due to lathi charge. And this shocked the Indians and they just wanted to make, and they were motivated to have this civil disobedience movement. And they are in your textbook page number 156. Recommendation of the Simon Commission is there. You can just go through the 7 points. And the first one, diarchy. Diarchy means the self-government. So according to the Simon Commission, diarchy should be abolished and there should be a complete autonomy in the provinces, including the Department of Law and Order. Diarchy means no self-government in India, but there should be a government by the British government. Okay, the complete autonomy in the provinces, including the Department of Law and Order. No self-government, no Swaraj for Indians. And other points you can just go through. Once again, I will tell why the Simon Commission is known as one of the causes for the civil disobedience movement. And it is not there in your textbook. You may just write down and I will give the note later. First of all, the Simon Commission was a failure. Why? Because all the Indians, they boycotted Simon Commission, and this Simon Commission, despite its boycott, the commission presented the report. There was no mention of the Swaraj, which was the greatest demand of people of India. So there is no mention about the Swaraj or the complete independence. So the people were not happy with the Simon Commission. So the first reason. Then the second one, the death of prominent leader Lala Lajpat Rai from severe beatings by British police officials further outraged the Indian public. The second reason under the Simon Commission, because many prominent leaders were beaten and Lala Lajpat Rai was beaten to death. And finally, there was a clear split in Muslim League over the issues of the Simon Commission. So the first cause for the civil disobedience movement, it was Simon Commission, and in Simon Commission there were some other reason, because the Simon Commission was a failure because Indians boycotted this particular commission because it gave no emphasis on Swaraj and no Indians were there in Simon Commission. You can just go through the textbook for the more clarification. And the second reason for the civil disobedience, it was the demand for Purna Swaraj in Lahore session of the Indian National Congress. Purna Swaraj, the meaning is that complete independence. There was a higher demand for the complete independence or the Purna Swaraj during the Lahore session of the Indian National Congress. You may please take page number 157. In December 1929, the Congress held its session at Lahore, which reflected the dynamic and aggressive mood of the Congress. So the Lahore session, it reflected the dynamic and the aggressive nature or the mood of the Indian National Congress. And the president of this meeting was Jawaharlal Nehru, and the Congress declared that Purna Swaraj or the complete independence should be the goal of the Congress. So under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, the Congress decided that the complete independence or the Purna Swaraj should be the goal of Congress. The Congress passed a resolution for boycotting the first round table conference. The first round table conference was called by the British Viceroy to discuss about the Simon Commission, but Congress decided to boycott the first round table conference and decided to launch a civil disobedience movement. On 26th January 1930, Purna Swaraj Divas was observed all over India, and this program was a huge success. So Purna Swaraj means complete independence, and there was a round table conference. The first round table conference was called, but the Congress, they decided not to participate in that one because the decision was to boycott the Simon Commission and all the efforts taken by the British government. And the demand or the goal, the primary goal of Congress was to attain the Purna Swaraj or the complete independence. I hope that you understood the two different causes, but both are connected. The first one, the Simon Commission, and the second one, the declaration for, and the second one, the demand for the Purna Swaraj in Lahore session. So that is enough for today. And in the next class, we will discuss the rest of the chapter. Thank you. Have a nice day.